Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi channel. Don't forget to subscribe and explore. Smoke clawed its way into his throat before his eyes even opened. Metal groaned above, buckled under strain it wasn't built to survive. Air stank of scorched wiring and something sharper, pressurized blood misted into heat. The harness cut deep into his shoulder, ribs grinding with every twitch. Breath came shallow. Not from fear. From the blunt certainty that his chest wasn't intact anymore. Glass spidered across the cracked visor, HUD failing one quadrant at a time. No warning chimes. Just a long, thin whine from the dorsal panel. Impact had scrambled the diagnostic. The silence was worse than any alarm. Light outside the cockpit pulsed irregularly through fractured alloy. Not fire. Not sunlight. Something colder, tinged with violet. Shapes moved just beyond the fracture lines. Slow, hesitant, unbothered by the heat or the oxygen loss. Fingers slipped on the manual latch. Synthetic leather peeled back from the glove, blackened and stuck with skin. No strength left to curse. Just breath. In and out. Shallow. Unsteady. Gravity pulled wrong when the hatch gave. Not lighter. Skewed. Like the terrain itself didn't trust geometry. His boots met soil too soft for stone, too dry for ash. Something alive once, now long flattened into something else. Footsteps sank without sound. Pressure dropped without wind. Tower fragments leaned out of the horizon, snapped in mid-gesture. Metal veined with root-like scars. Spires stretched skyward but broke before purpose. No sign of growth. No signs of war. Just remnants arranged without order, like a city that died mid-sentence. The suit's shoulder node clicked 3 times. Power drain. The transmitter hadn't reconnected. No satellite lock. No orbital ping. No fallback frequency. A green light blinked behind the cracks of the screen. The beacon was still armed. Objective remained. 2 days. Survey, mark, deploy. Not save. Not speak. Not listen. Breath steamed against the cracked faceplate as another gust passed over the terrain, though nothing had moved. Not trees. Not rock. No sand disturbed. But the sound, it rolled beneath his feet as if something below had exhaled. Long, slow. Waiting. Legs carried forward out of protocol, not faith. Each step pressed deeper into terrain that grew less familiar. Architecture shifted. What had looked like ruin began to suggest repetition. Shapes that hinted at logic, but refused to mirror. No entrances. No doors. Just gaps where light broke wrong. His hand dropped instinctively to the sidearm. Still there. Still charged. Still useless if the air itself couldn't be trusted. By the time he crossed what might have once been a plaza, the sense of being observed no longer crept. It stood. Right at his shoulder. Never touching. Never speaking. Only watching. Heat did not rise. Sweat did not bead. But skin registered threat all the same. Something blinked in the distance, low, rhythmic. Not tech. Not fire. Some residue of motion embedded into the walls. A pattern repeating without source. His foot found stone. Not broken. Not loose. Intact steps led downward where no structure should have stood. He descended. Not for safety. For lack of reason to stay above. Below, air thickened. Metallic, but sweet. Not rot. Not oil. Something like breath filtered through coral. He didn't strip the helmet. Didn't trust instinct, though part of him ached to remove it. Not for relief. For sound. For confirmation he hadn't gone deaf to everything that mattered. No birds. No wind. No distant roar of systems. Only the pressure of unseen watching. Close now. So close it warmed the left side of his neck. He didn't stop. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because something inside had begun to forget what fear used to feel like. Footsteps no longer sank. They dragged. Every joint beneath the suit stiffened with silent protest, the cooling system lagging 2 degrees behind demand. Visibility narrowed. What passed for atmosphere blurred the edges of distance, not with fog, but with density, like walking through the breath of something alive and waiting. Something brushed past his leg without weight. No shape, no noise. Just absence where touch should have been. The weapon stayed holstered. Instinct whispered that the rules had changed. Ahead, a low ridge split apart. Not naturally. Each shard tilted outward at identical angles, as if peeled by something too precise for erosion. Between them, shadows swirled low across the floor. Not in wind, in pattern. He crouched beneath the rise, ribs grinding against pressure plating. A breath. Shallow. Controlled. The ground no longer felt like ground. Something pulsed beneath it. No tremor. Just the suggestion of pulse. A reminder. A noise broke the stillness, not loud. Not sharp. A rustle with no source. Dryness scraping against moisture, but not near the surface. Higher. Above. Within reach. Pale limbs moved with fluid restraint across the crest of the ridge. Not armor. Not suit. Skin, translucent where light struck it sideways, glowing faintly at the joints. No threat posture. No weapons. No urgency. Eyes found his without hesitation. No startle. No surprise. Only presence. Calm, quiet, incomprehensibly aware. The mouth opened. Words formed without precision. You fall. He didn't answer. Not because he couldn't. Because the voice reached in past speech. Like something remembered before it was ever heard. She crouched. Hands open. No approach. Just presence. Stillness, until his knees gave way and he collapsed into half-kneel, half-fall. Pain spiked, flared, settled. Her gaze never shifted. Pale fingers moved toward the edge of his armor. Not to touch. To see. Not inspection. Invitation. Broken here, she said. The word struggled, shaped by a throat not made for standard. Light glowed from the base of her wrist. Not heat. Not fire. Bioluminescence bleeding gently along vein lines that traced patterns no species had reason to map. She touched near the fracture along his rib. Pressure reduced. Numbness followed. Not total. Not artificial. Just enough to move again. A faint scent lingered in her proximity. Metallic. Organic. Memory stirring in ways his training never prepared for. She looked down, then to the left, tilting her head toward a slope carved not by weather, but by retreat. No speech followed. Only a slow turn, beginning to walk. No command to follow. Just certainty that being alone again wasn't survival. It was surrender. His steps followed hers without thought. Not submission. Recognition. A language before language. The terrain shifted underfoot, not rocky now, but grown. Each step pressed into something soft that retracted upon contact, reshaped after passage. Her feet left no imprint. His did. The surface adjusted for her. Judged him. Walls formed as they walked. Not built. Not placed. Structures rose out of the terrain like ribs arching from a long-buried spine. Light came not from fixtures, but from strands embedded in the surfaces, casting soft hues that bent before touching her skin. She passed through a narrow opening without resistance. He followed slower, shoulder brushing against something that pulsed once, gentle, disapproving. Inside, air thickened again. Warmth settled around his faceplate. Moisture clung to his skin beneath the collar. Breath slowed. Not because of exertion, but because stillness demanded it. She gestured toward a surface shaped like a seat, though nothing about it resembled furniture. Material folded beneath him, adjusting until his weight dispersed evenly. She lowered beside him, not touching, not watching. From the darkness ahead, shapes moved. Smaller forms. Uncertain, yet bold. Eyes blinked. Too large for their faces, too quiet to be animal. One made a sound. Not a cry. A mimic of breath. She spoke. Not to him. To them. Safe. Her hand reached toward his arm again. This time no wound required attention. Still, the contact returned. Slower. Warmer. Meant for meaning, not repair. My name. Sevia. Spoken carefully. Not rehearsed. Measured like a secret with weight. Her gaze didn't seek his approval. Just comprehension. Pain ebbed from his ribs. Numbness faded. Something colder crept in its place. Not from injury. From the way her presence rearranged understanding. She looked away, not out of submission. Out of memory. Out of weight carried too long. My children need. No plea. No offer. Just fact laid bare, like breath held too long. Not yet explained. But present. Breathing. Watching. Waiting. Walls shifted when she passed them. Not with movement but with recognition. Light receded from one place and gathered in another, always just ahead of her hands. Surfaces that had seemed inert revealed slight flecks beneath her touch, rising or softening depending on need. What she called home had no edges, no corners, no dividing lines between structure and presence. Two shapes lingered at the perimeter where the glow began to fade. Small, silent, unmoving. One leaned into the curvature of a wall that pulsed dimly with heat. The other crouched low, spine hunched as if burdened by weight too heavy for something that size. Neither stepped forward. Neither turned away. Limbs thinner than they should have been. Shoulders drawn close together, not in fear, but preservation. Pale skin with undertones not entirely hers, softer, warmer, textured differently. Eyes too round. One pair burned faint gold. The other a soft, murky blue, almost gray. Light beneath their skin shimmered in places it shouldn't have. Wrists, throats, temples. Uneven. Hesitant. Like signals fading in and out of alignment. She moved toward them without sound. Her hand extended, palm outward, not to summon but to reassure. The one by the wall shifted, pressing closer, face buried against the bend of her waist. The crouching child didn't move at all. He watched without blinking. No question formed. No answer waited. She turned back toward the inner space. The walls responded, opening downward into a shape that resembled a basin. Material pooled into itself. From somewhere unseen, warmth spread into the cavity. Steam rose, not harsh, not fragrant, just enough to speak of preparation. Her hands moved with familiarity. Not ritual. Necessity. Strands of something root-like extended from beneath her wrist, dipped into the mixture. When they retracted, it thickened. Colors changed. Nothing mechanical. Nothing synthetic. Only motion that served function. She didn't ask if he was hungry. She placed the bowl in front of him with both hands, lowering her gaze only after it rested. He didn't move to touch it. The children remained at distance. One eye followed him. No sound passed between them. No gesture of welcome or rejection. Only observation. No suspicion. Just the caution of something that had seen enough to forget how to trust. Her voice broke silence again. Not abrupt. Not soft. Spoken as if continuing a conversation that hadn't begun. You came in fire. He didn't answer. Sky opened. Light struck ground. Walls shook. Her palm hovered just above the basin's edge. Before there was promise. That one would come. Made not like us, but needed. She sat beside the bowl. Knees drawn in, spine curved toward her children. Some said it meant the end. Others said the beginning. Her voice caught. Not from emotion. From memory catching on something sharp. I only remember the silence after. He remained still. The seal behind his visor hissed quietly from pressure adjustment. No threat present, but the suit recognized internal distress. Heart rate above normal. Blood oxygen below. She didn't look at him again. Not yet. Her attention fixed on the food between them. They are not strong. Time is not kind here. Not to ones born from fracture. Her gaze lifted then. Not into his eyes, but slightly beneath. You came with purpose. He blinked once. Not denial. Not confirmation. Most do. Her fingers traced a line along the surface of the floor. It brightened in response, mapping a path that curved behind her into the shadows. You may leave when you choose. But I will not ask. The child beside the wall shivered. Not from cold. From something inside pulling tight beneath skin. She leaned forward, gently touched the child's shoulder. Light passed from her hand into the small frame. It traveled slowly, pushing dimness outward. For a moment the glow stabilized. Breath returned to the child's body in rhythm. Then it faltered again. She said no words, only held the child until the tremor passed. The one still crouched began to hum, a sound low, dissonant, arrhythmic. Not pain. Not comfort. A signal for something only they understood. His fingers brushed against the outer edge of the bowl. Warmth transferred instantly. Not heat from matter. Recognition of touch. His mission core pulsed once beneath the armor plate. A warning. Time already slipping. Objective unresolved. Signal unconfirmed. He didn't move. She drew her knees tighter, voice quieter. I do not ask what you carry. It is yours. But if you are what the fire brought, they will know. Her gaze flicked briefly to the one still humming, now rocking slightly in place. They always know. The pulse at his side blinked again. Not a threat. A reminder. She turned her back to him, arms wrapping both children in silence. The walls dimmed in agreement. Air thickened but didn't press. Just waited. Like everything else here. Light withdrew from the chamber without warning. No dimming, no fade, just absence. What remained came from below, low pulses drawn from the floor's inner lining, warm and shifting like heat pressed through skin instead of air. No alarms. No sound. No disruption from the walls that breathed without needing to prove they were alive. He sat in silence, spine curved forward, hands locked loosely at his knees. Hours had passed without measure. No planetary cycle. No stars through ceiling cracks. Only the rhythm of interior pulses, counting time with the patience of things not human. She stepped into that stillness without sound. No announcement. No pretense. Only presence, shaped by tension too quiet to be resisted. Language had changed. No broken structure. No hesitation. Her voice moved with shape now, words not borrowed, but possessed. She stopped close enough that her breath warmed the air between them. I will give you pleasure, human. No gesture followed. No inflection altered the weight of it. Not invitation. Not seduction. A statement. Clean. Carved in grief. He didn't speak. Eyes held hers, not to dominate, not to question. To absorb. To make sure nothing inside him misunderstood what stood in front of him. My children need a father. She moved no closer. Not to raise. To survive. Each word left her mouth with restraint, not burdened by shame, but by history that left no space for softness. Her knees lowered into the surface beneath. No cushion formed this time. No adaptation from the floor. It let her body meet it raw, without concession. Hands rested on thighs. Chin lifted enough that her gaze never dropped. They do not grow. Not beyond where they are. They slow. They weaken. She turned her head slightly, not to indicate direction, but to remember. To reach back. Before the breaking, a pairing was attempted. No record kept. No permission granted. One survived. 2 were born. 1 died within the first sun cycle. The other 2. Her mouth closed briefly. Breath pushed past her nostrils. Not trembling. Contained. Years stretch long here. Biology does not move with time. The light we live in touches some and not others. One hand rose. Not toward him. Toward the empty space between them. I searched for others. None returned. We are not found. We are not claimed. We are only held. The other hand lifted now, both palms open. You are not the first from above. But you are the first to survive impact. The first to wake. The first whose skin didn't bleed from the air. No answer formed inside his mouth. Every response would have turned to ash on his tongue. She did not move from her position on the floor. No change in posture. No shift in pressure. They will not reach full cycle unless I bond again. Her eyes did not blink. There is enough within you. The hum of the walls receded further. Even the pulse beneath the floor reduced itself to a low murmur, letting space form around her voice. I do not ask for marriage. I do not ask for belief. I ask for continuation. For a way forward that is not death disguised as waiting. She lowered her hands. Fingers closed loosely. Shoulders remained still. If you choose this, you will not be abandoned. You will not be drained. You will not be used. A pause. No breath. Just quiet so complete it made sound irrelevant. You will be needed. Not for who you were. For what can live through you. No heat between them. No perfume. No drama staged by light or space. Only her presence, carved out of patience and wounds that healed only because they had no other option. He remained seated, jaw set, pulse unreadable beneath the armor. Mind divided between what he was sent to do and what now stood inches away, not pleading, but existing in a truth so bare it cut through every mission protocol that had kept him alive until now. She leaned forward slightly. Not enough to change anything. Just enough to close distance with gravity alone. I do not want your pity. Another pause. I want your answer. The space around them held its breath. The air, the walls, the ground. Waiting. Not demanding. Not hoping. Just waiting. The smaller one sat closest to the organic wall, knees drawn in, chin tucked behind thin forearms. Skin shimmered where the joints bent, barely visible patterns, interrupted by dull patches where the glow no longer reached. Each breath rasped too softly, as though lungs forgot how to pull what little air existed here. Limbs were narrow but proportioned. Not alien. Not fully. The other stood beside the curved entrance, silent but upright, eyes fixed on him without blinking. One hand moved across its chest in slow rhythm, matching the same unconscious gesture he'd made moments earlier when pain shifted inside his ribcage. Not imitation for amusement. Reflex mirrored with precision. Shoulders angled like his. Weight shifted to the same side. He stepped closer. Pupils adjusted to the low light. Faces came into focus. The one by the wall had cheekbones formed like his own. Not exact. Softer. Jaw less defined. But unmistakably shaped by something familiar. No translator could explain that kind of recognition. The pulse monitor at his wrist activated without command. Internal sensors responded to proximity. The readings came in fragments, irregular rhythms, unstable cellular markers, spike and drop metabolic patterns. Genetic code riddled with errors no native species would produce on its own. Biological data cascaded across his lens, numbers impossible to miss. Decay. Accelerating. He looked up. The child standing nearest him didn't flinch. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, as though aware it was being measured but indifferent to judgment. He asked the question without dressing it in sympathy. Where is their father? She didn't answer. She knelt beside them both, arms wrapping around shoulders too small for the silence they carried. Her fingers pressed into their backs, not to soothe, but to hold something inside from breaking loose. Her face didn't shift, not even the eyes, but every part of the space around them changed. Light from the walls dimmed until it barely held shape. Structures once warm to his suit sensors dropped temperature in seconds. The air thickened with moisture but held no scent. Sound faded. Not into quiet, but into something below silence, where sorrow isn't expressed but suspended. The child closest to her clung tighter, arms locking around her waist. Skin glowed unevenly along the spine, bursts of light struggling to maintain rhythm. The other turned away, walked slowly toward him, and without sound, reached up and pressed its forehead lightly to the front of his armor. Not a gesture learned. A signal. She closed her eyes. Not from shame. From memory returning faster than words could form. He placed one hand on the child's head, not understanding why it felt natural, only that the trembling beneath his palm wasn't from cold. He looked down again, watched the patterns under the skin flare and recede in erratic bursts, like dying stars caught mid-collapse. She opened her mouth. Spoke just once. They will not last. Not without something more. He asked what had been tried. She touched her own side, just above the hip, fingers tracing scars too faint to be seen but not forgotten. Old science. Broken tools. Borrowed knowledge from voices that never returned. He wanted to ask more. Part of him needed to. But the child at his side rested against his leg now, breathing shallow, arms folded into its chest as if shielding something too delicate to show. He knelt slowly, letting the child lean in without resistance. One hand on its back, another cupping the side of its skull. The temperature against his glove fluctuated wildly. Heat in pulses. Cold in waves. Nothing held long enough to suggest stability. She reached forward, laid one hand across both their shoulders. Her eyes no longer asked. They waited. He waited until the walls dimmed fully, until even the pulse beneath the floor withdrew into dormancy. No sound. No movement. Only breath in his helmet, slow and artificial, fed through a reserve barely holding. The children slept curled into her, limbs tangled in hers, their uneven glow dimmed to embers. She hadn't moved in hours. Not even when he stood. The corridor narrowed behind the chamber, walls close enough that his shoulders brushed both sides. Every step pressed into a surface that responded without shape, adjusting just enough to allow passage, but not welcoming it. He reached the narrow chamber near the far end, shielded from the others by a bend that light did not reach. A compartment near his ribs hissed open. Inside, the node sat flat beneath fabric, pressed to his skin. He touched it with 2 fingers. Red. A single flash. Long unbroken. The screen lit behind his visor. Countdown paused. Sequence armed. Signal dormant. Sterilization field ready. 50 meters of radius. 5 minutes from initiation to neutralization. No recovery window. He activated the audio log. Voice synthetic, clipped, familiar only in that it lacked all emotion. Confirm biological anomaly. Cross-species contamination violates Order 17. Threat to genomic protocol class red. No contact. No extraction. No language assessment. No assistance. Cleanse and report. He stared at the line of text blinking at the bottom of the interface. Survival risk. Acceptable. His thumb hovered above the command key. Initiate. 5 letters. 1 press. He withdrew his hand. Breath slowed again, not from habit. From weight. The kind that pushed behind the eyes and through the chest. Not pain. Not fear. Something deeper. Not even guilt. Something with no word in any training manual. He sat. Back against the wall, knees pulled in just enough that his wrist rested on bone. The device remained active. No alarms. Just presence. Waiting like it had all along, buried under every hour of silence, every glance from those children, every shift of her breath when she turned away. He closed the interface. The red light did not go out. His hand trembled. Not from cold. Not from exhaustion. The body responded to conflict with chemical logic, and logic had no guidance for this. He remembered the voice of the mission lead. No name. No face. Just the words played back from memory too often revisited to forget. If you see them, you've already failed containment. If you feel anything, you've been compromised. He stared into the dark where no one else stood. Where decisions existed in silence without witness. Where answers were measured not in success, but in what was left after. The red light blinked again. His hand wouldn't stop shaking. She waited until he returned from the corridor. No questions. No accusation in her gaze. Only stillness, shaped by understanding. One hand lifted from her side and brushed across the wall behind her. The surface shifted, peeled outward like skin parting under practiced touch, revealing a cavity no wider than a man's shoulders. Light spilled out. Not bright. Not artificial. A muted glow that carried memory in color. She stepped aside. He approached slowly. Inside the hollow, translucent panels rotated on their own, suspended in motion, each frame holding a fragment. Not images. Impressions captured in movement. Not playback. Something more intimate. Scenes recorded not by machine but by memory grafted into material, alive, receptive, reactive. The first opened with a sky not unlike his own homeworld's. Blue, stretched too far, clouds slow and layered. Towers rose beneath it, tall and curved, shaped by design but softened by something organic in their construction. The ground pulsed with quiet movement, not traffic, not machinery, but biostructures that seemed to grow while inhabited. Figures walked those streets. Her people. Skin touched by light, movement graceful but functional. No fear in their eyes. No urgency in their posture. Communication happened through gesture, through modulation of skin tone, through contact that didn't dominate. Among them stood humans. Unsuited. Smiling. Eating. Exchange, not occupation. One leaned into her, short hair, scar across the left cheek, grin sharp but not unkind. His fingers brushed her face with familiarity. She tilted toward him without resistance. The children weren't there. The panel shifted. Sky darkened. Smoke consumed the blue. Not from engines. From impact. Screams cut the air, not human. Not hers. Just sound broken into pieces. Structures collapsed inward. No explosion. Implosion. Controlled. Targeted. Flashes of red burst across the horizon. Not missiles. Lasers from above. Precision strikes. No warning. The panel dimmed. She turned away, arm lowered. He stepped back. No question needed to be asked. Her voice followed the silence. We trusted. No anger laced the words. No accusation. We gave names. Food. Shelter. Crossed languages for them. She faced him again. I was one of those chosen to carry forward. Her hand touched her own abdomen. Flat now. Still. A memory too deep to wear on her skin. He left before they did. Said he would return with medicine. Said he would bring others. Said our bond meant something to more than just us. She sat on the floor again. Not out of submission. Because standing no longer served the moment. No transmission followed. No signal. Just fire. The others died trying to help the last ones leave. They failed. She looked toward the children. Both slept in silence. Breath shallow. Chests rising out of sequence. They do not know. Her hand pressed against the floor. Light passed through her wrist again. The panel behind her faded. They think I am enough. He watched her longer this time. Not because he didn't believe. Because he did. No part of her body pleaded. No part of her story bent toward sympathy. Every detail she showed had purpose, not performance. He remembered the command phrase again. Genetic impurity. No contact. No retrieval. Contain and cleanse. He didn't reach for the device. She stood slowly. You are not him. Not spoken as a comfort. A distinction. But something in you remembers the cost. Her hand reached toward his chest. Not to touch, but to pause inches away. Her palm hovered over his ribs, over the place where his heartbeat fought his orders. Maybe this time what we create won't be left behind. He stood across from her, weight settled unevenly, voice buried in his throat longer than he could measure. The words didn't come as confession. They didn't stutter. No apology shaped them. Just truth, carried without embellishment. Sterilization beacon. Arm. Activated. Hidden beneath his uniform since the moment of impact. Not a signal device. Not a distress call. A purge. Designed to dissolve organic matter in a radius wide enough to leave no survivors, no structures, no trace of anomaly. No distinction between threat and innocence. No lines drawn between children and contamination. He told her everything. She listened without flinching. She didn't argue. Didn't plead. Instead, she turned toward the chamber behind her and spoke a single word. Not one from his language. Not one he understood. But it summoned motion. Two small forms emerged from the glowless dark. Eyes wide, not in fear. Just open. One limped. The other held something soft and tattered between thin fingers, not a toy, something worn, something carried for comfort no one asked for. They stopped in front of him. She stepped back. Then look in their eyes and do what you must. No defiance in her tone. No pressure. No softness. Just those words, nothing more, like air made solid in her mouth. His hand closed around the device. Thumb on the pressure plate. Red light pulsing through the skin. It beat against his palm like a second heartbeat, one that didn't belong to his body. He knelt. The children didn't step back. The younger tilted its head up. Expression unreadable. Not pleading. Just present. Waiting for what the moment would ask of it. He opened his palm. The interface glared upward. Countdown idle. One press, and none of this would exist past the next breath. The older child touched his knee. Not to stop him. To connect. His thumb moved. Screen turned black. No prompt followed. No warning. Command deleted. Beacon dead. For a long moment nothing moved. She didn't reach for him. She didn't speak. She only watched him sit lower, hands resting on his legs, face turned not toward her, but toward the ground where the children still stood. He lowered his head. Not in surrender. Beside her, not beneath her. The children sat between them, pressing into both their sides. No weapon between them now. No protocol. Only presence. Kept alive by the choice he could never unmake. He didn't leave. No transmission sent. No signal carved through atmosphere. No return window requested. The device stayed buried beneath layers of root-soaked soil, casing split, battery drained, core silent. No blinking. No hum. No warning. Just a black shard pressed beneath ground that no longer remembered its purpose. Each morning began without sun. The sanctuary breathed in cycles of light drawn from interior warmth, adjusted by her presence. Walls shifted around their movements now, not just hers. Where he walked, corridors opened. Where he rested, surfaces softened. Sensors embedded in his suit fed new protocols into dormant systems, repairing what time had corroded. He began treatments by touch. The children's data was incomplete. Corrupted strands, misaligned protein signatures, decaying sequences that repeated without correction. His implants decrypted what they could. Autosynthesis initiated protein patching from glandular catalysts. His blood, restructured through internal conversion, offered base samples for enzyme stabilization. First trials burned. The younger's skin blistered before retracting inwards. Pain without cry. No withdrawal. Just held breath, eyes wide, hands gripping his arm until it passed. He adjusted dosages. Second round took. Light returned to their bones. Not in pulses. In glow that held without breaking. Sleep no longer trembled beneath their limbs. Breathing synchronized. Skin smoothed along joints that no longer clicked when bent. They began to run. Not far. Not fast. But without falling. She watched. Later, when he opened the sequence for reproductive mapping, her body responded without resistance. No surgery. No pain. Contact created realignment. Hormonal shifts cascaded on command. Cells merged without rejection. Within days, she no longer felt foreign to his scans. Genetic boundaries blurred. New architecture built itself from shared contribution. A new sequence began forming behind her navel, coiled and complete before either spoke of it. He monitored without intrusion. Heartbeat formed. Slow at first. Then steady. Stronger than expected. Skin formed over organ clusters still flexible but promising. No sign of degradation. No inherited collapse. She no longer asked him why. He no longer asked himself how. The children drew pictures on the walls now. Not symbols. Shapes with balance. One drew two tall forms. One short. One smaller still, undefined but central. Glowing trails surrounded them. Not art. Record. When he pressed his palm to the wall beside it, light followed his outline. The structure didn't react for instruction, it answered in affirmation. They no longer slept in separate spaces. Her breath moved beside his in rhythm no translator could measure. No unit could categorize. He didn't speak of Earth. She didn't speak of before. Only breath. Only presence. Only what came next. Above the moon's crust, the ship drifted without motion correction. No light flared from its engines. No systems surged for reentry. Internal comms cycled twice per hour, pulling nothing from the surface but static too uniform to be natural, too consistent to be interference. Not scrambled. Not corrupted. Just blank. Command logged the silence without delay. No return signal. No life marker. No thermal spike. Sterilization assumed complete. The report auto-generated from preset parameters. Contaminated Zone 17. No retrieval. No surveillance required. Anomaly listed as resolved. Entry sealed. File close. On Earth, data folded into archives too wide to check twice. No name. No case review. No need for questions when silence fit protocol. Below, beneath layers of rock that never knew sunlight, the sanctuary breathed differently. Light now pulsed with a rhythm guided by heartbeat, not program. Surfaces once dulled from disuse had regained luster, not polished, but warm. Not decorative, but alive. He moved through the chamber with no armor. Skin bare to the touch of walls that remembered him now. Breath met air not sterilized, but shared. She rested nearby. Eyes closed. Not asleep. Just present in quiet. Her skin glowed at the joints, not from illness, but change. The children no longer drifted at the edges. They ran. They laughed without sound, mouths wide, faces brightened by energy never shown before. One had his eyes. The other her grace. The third was forming still, hidden but known. The walls had already begun shaping space around it, preparing without instruction. Far above, systems drifted into shutdown sequence. Satellites marked the moon as unworthy of further scan. No satellite passed within visual range again. No broadcast would ever name them. No record would ever confirm what survived. But beneath abandoned soil, two species no longer separate pulled warmth from each other and from something born between them. No flag marked the ground. No anthem played. No words spoken for what they were becoming. Only breath. Only movement. Only life. And it belonged to no one but them.